Welcome everybody to another episode of the FamBoss Frequency. My name is Chris. I'm your host, and thanks for joining me, man. It's been an awesome start to the week, and looking forward to getting better every day. Ready, set, go. And making it whole. Absolutely. Taking every dream, making it whole, and I remind myself every single day that I'm absolutely living the dream. Who has it better than us? Not a lot of people. So, on this episode, we're going to cover the someday trap, my favorite. You ever had an idea? You're like, oh, this would be a great idea. Do you know why I share my ideas so freely with people? I'll be 1,000% honest with you, because I know that most of the people that I talk to and that I know will never go out there and do half of what they think they're going to do. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about how perfection is the enemy of the pivot. And I have been around long enough. I've owned lots of businesses. I've worked for lots of companies, and I've seen people that have pivoted too late and people that never even got started. So today we're going to talk about the power of the pivot. So let's get started. So years ago, when I wanted to get into my first business, I really didn't know what it took, but I had an idea and a concept. And so I was a phone store, and I wrote a business plan, the best that I knew anyway. And I was prepared to go to a bank and get some money for this business. And I don't remember how much it was, but the long and the short of it all was, to me, it was a lot of money. Because, I mean, you had the buy-in, and then, of course, from the buy-in, because I was buying it from somebody else, there were other things that I had no idea about. But my grandmother and I went and talked to this guy, and all he wanted was out and $7,000. So we paid him $7,000 and called it a day. And so I say all that to say this. I didn't know what I was getting into, but man, it was quite the journey for 3.5 years. And I watched an entire industry change. And when I say I watched an entire industry change, I mean, I absolutely saw the phone business go from bag phones to text messaging and smart devices in 3.5 years. I watched us go from making several $100s up to $400, $500 per unit with residuals to $175 one time. And by the way, you better hit your numbers. They're going to kick you out. So like I said, we watched that industry change quite a bit. So let's talk about this trap, the someday trap. All right. If you wait until the lights are all green to leave your house, you'll never get out of the driveway, people. So if I would have waited to be a broadcasting expert, I would have never started this podcast. The box was to be on the microphone, would still be in the box on a storage shelf in a warehouse somewhere. But here we are. So when we talk about the myth of ready, let's talk about the complexity of this trap. How do we overcomplicate things? It's the perfect logo. I've got to have the website. Everything's got to be perfect, and everything's got to be on point, and it's got to be straight out of the box that way. And the reality is it doesn't, because nobody cares. Nobody knows who you are. You haven't gotten started yet. You're really, looking for perfection. And the reality is nobody cares about what your logo looks like if you can't solve their problem today. So think about it. If I waited until my bay was clean to fix a broken truck, would I get in there and get to work? Probably not. But I know what I need to do, and I know what it takes to get there. And I understand, most importantly, that I have to get started some way. And even if it's messy and it's ugly and it's not as professional, as you move along, things, get more polished, things get better. And at the end of the day, all we're really after is we want to know that what we're striving for, that level of perfection, we work toward that every single day. We make strides to make that happen every single day. And that's what we're after. We want to make sure that the perfection that we seek is there. Absolutely. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to create a situation where our clientele never gets anything because we never got started. So let's move it back around. If you listen to the long form podcast the other day, I talked about how I turned $1,000 into a company and how I got a really awesome result in the end, but it wasn't the end result that I set out for. All right. So when I had that $1,000, I didn't have a corporate headquarters. I didn't have a fleet of trucks. I didn't have a 750 credit score to go out and buy whatever I wanted. I hadn't been incorporated for 2 years with an LLC. All these things I hadn't done. I had a 99 Suburban and a set of magnets and a hope and a dream and a bunch of tools that I'd, kind of put together to make it happen. So when I spent my money, I spent it wisely. I knew what the growth had to be, but first I had to get started. And there's a long process when you start a company that you have to go through when you start a business, and whether it's part-time, full-time, it doesn't matter. So one of the things that we always look at is, what does it take from the time I go to concept and start putting things into that sample? There's a lot of things you have to do, but what is the shortest term from concept to putting things into action? That's what I like to ask myself. So what's the shortest route? Because, I would say shortcuts is the longest way to get anywhere. And I totally agree with that. But how do I turn dollar bills? That's what I want to know. How can I start turning dollar bills? So in the example of roadside assistance, the easiest thing was to call the insurance companies I've done business with before and say, hey, I'm back in the game. What you got? Oh, thank goodness you're back. We'll stack you up all night, every day of the week, because nobody answers their phones after 5 o'clock. Awesome. So that was my start. And then I polished the logo and the website and all that went with it, but I had to have a name to put on the business license, to put on the insurance, to submit to the insurance companies to get paid. That was the shortest term. Now, after that, of course, I made videos and got into marketing and all the other fun things that I discussed in the long form. But the point is, I had to figure out what was the shortest distance from my concept to the starting line so that I could get started. And I made some mistakes along the way, and that's fine. And I've made some terrible mistakes along the way that you're like, oh, that's just unforgivable. Well, that's me learning. That was me getting started. But I would have never made those mistakes to learn from those mistakes had I never gotten started. So if you're stalling on that task because you're worried about getting started, let's go back to that 5-minute rule I talked about before. Put yourself 5 minutes into the task and say, all right, is this really viable? Spend 5 minutes and say, what is the shortest term between getting started and turning dollar bills? Like, I have a good concept here. Let's get it figured out. So that is my challenge to you. If you've got an idea, if you've got a concept, if you have something that you feel like you can bring to market, make it happen. Do something today to get you toward that goal. Even if it's writing it down and figuring it out. Well, I don't know what I want to do. Well, nobody does, but you've got a concept, right? You may not know how to get to the bitter end, but at least start doing something to get to your goal. Start your research today. Start making your list today. Start making your checklist today. And make sure that you do something every day to get to that goal until you've exhausted all of your options and you're like, I can't do this. All right, that's fair. You can't do it. There's no option for you to get to where you want to be. And I'm cool with that. But the point is, don't sell yourself short. You're way stronger than you believe that you are in your mind. You have a lot more potential than you realize. And again, all we're trying to do is stay out of that stupid trap. You're always the someday. No, we're not someday. What can I do today to get to my goal? What is your timeline? Be aggressive with your timeline. If you go to work 8 hours a day, that leaves you a balance of another 16 hours. What are you going to do with that time? I've had full-time jobs, and I have absolutely come home working on my own project with that full-time job with my side hustle, trying to figure out what it is Chris wants to do. How can Chris take care of himself? So if you say, I don't have time, evaluate your time and see where you land on that. I honestly believe that you have way more ability to figure that part of it out from the time perspective than you realize. So my challenge to you today is figure out what it is that works the best for you. As far as your business plan, start figuring it out and see how long it takes to get you started and get to execution. That's your goal for the day. So till next time, join me on the FamBoss Frequency and do something today that your future self will thank you for. That's all I got. We'll see you next time.
From the front lines of your business to the heart of your home, we're building a legacy that lasts. You're locked into the FamBoss Frequency with Chris Black. To join the conversation, call the line at 855-4-PODCAST. Chris wants to hear what you have to say. Get your voice on the air and let's move the needle together.